Hello from MBA. We are very pleased to recognize the Distinguished Service Award and the Distinguished Alumnus Award. Obviously, we're all sorry we can't be in person, but we hope this virtual presentation is a meaningful way to connect with the school and to thank these exceptional individuals. We typically begin with some music at almost all of our programs, so I'd like to now welcome the Headmaster Singers, and they will perform a song that I hope will lift your spirits for this Thanksgiving of 2020.
The boar's head and hand bear I, bedecked with bays and rosemary, and I pray to my masters be merry, codesti sin convivio. Caput apri defero, redens laudes Domino. Caput apri defero, redens laudes Domino. The boar's head, as I understand, is the rarest dish in all the land, which thus be decked with a gay garland, never servire cantico. Caput apri defero, redens laudes Domino. Caput apri defero, redens laudes Domino. Our steward hath provided this in honor of the King of bliss, which on this day to be served is in regimentia trio. Caput apri defero, redens laudes Domino. Caput apri defero, redens laudes Domino.
It is great to have our singers at school and part of this program. It makes such a difference hearing the music at all of our events, and I am appreciative of our choral directors for their hard work in preparing them to enrich today's program. As all of you know, the school year has been abnormal at best, but it has been steady and meaningful in so many ways, and in ways in which that I'd like to celebrate this Thanksgiving and to express my own gratitude for the ways in which our students, their families, and our faculty and staff have helped us stay in school. We began the school year on August 17th. We started in a hybrid fashion where half the school were here one day and then the other half the next day, and when you weren't at school you were online in class virtually. About 4 weeks or actually less time than that, we started bringing back one class at a time, and then eventually two classes, I should say. And so for really most of the semester we have been in person with everyone. And it has been terrific to be back in school. I am a big fan of the American Psychiatric Association and their perspective that young people really need to be in a community, and they need to be part of a community, and their mental health, their psychological welfare is so much better when they can see their friends, when they can be with their teachers, when they can feel needed and engaged in school. And we have tried to be engaged in every way possible. This weekend, for example, we had a football game on Friday night. Our team had a great season. We made it to the semifinals. We then had a play production this weekend, and then there were none. An Agatha Christie performance that went over terrifically. It was so much fun to be at the play on Sunday afternoon and see the joy in the actors' faces and in the director's expression and in the audience's appreciation for this event. And so we've tried to carry on in every way possible. If you came out to school, it would look a little different with a lot of tents and with various mitigations, of course, wearing masks and keeping at a physical distance. Our nurse's office stays busy, but she and all of us have tried to do the best we could to make sure that we stay healthy and calm and focused on being here day after day. With just about 7 school days left after Thanksgiving before we begin exams, our hope is that we'll finish the semester in person and hope for the best this second half of the school year. One of the highlights of the year will be the opening of our new H. Frank Burkholder Wellness Center. It is coming at the right time. You know, it'll be a way to, I think, lift our spirits, to celebrate having enough space for 810 boys. It'll be a place on the campus where we can think about emotional and mental health and wellness, and we are excited to open that building in early January, and as I said, it's not soon enough to lift our spirits and to provide the space and opportunities for the entire student body. I would now like to recognize those individuals who have been honored today by being recommended to receive the Distinguished Service Award. These are all MBA individuals who have been in the roles of first responders or have helped during this pandemic. And we thought that would be a particularly appropriate way in which the school could identify and highlight and to celebrate these graduates. So what we're going to do now is show you some photography that identifies these individuals named and recognized today as receiving the MBA Distinguished Service Award for 2020. know you join me in celebrating those individuals we just pictured for receiving the Distinguished Service Award, a recognition that we started a number of years ago and one that we are proud to do each year, particularly this year in 2020, to remember all those people who have made a difference during this pandemic. Annually for more than 30 years, we have recognized a distinguished alumnus. And it seemed also very appropriate to recognize someone in the healthcare area. I'm proud to present to you Morgan Wills, a 1986 graduate of MBA, someone I have known well for these past 20 plus years, someone whose son I taught, someone who has helped me numerous times by being a part of programs at the school, being a significant player at an international symposium we had on healthcare. What has impressed me about Morgan over the years is his sense of mission, his character, and of course the ways in which he has led Salome, which is a type of ministry serving those people who need health care in Nashville, people that are primarily immigrants to our city, people whose resources are small and sometimes not in existence at all, so they need free health care. And Morgan has led this program for a number of years now. It is clear to me that he could have been an extremely successful doctor in a very large practice, but he made the conscious decision that he wanted to care for and to help others, and he is in the right place. In particular, I wanted to highlight today that Morgan has expanded the services of Salome by finding a location in the Antioch area where there's a large immigrant population and bringing that health care to those in need in a place that very much wants and needs that kind of medical care. Personally, I am grateful for the kindness that I see Morgan show others on a daily basis, the humility that he projects in all that he does, and the ways in which he represents our school so beautifully. As I said, he graduated in 1986. He went on to Princeton University. He then took a trip abroad and traveled some time in Africa, where I know those experiences informed him about taking care of people in need now in Nashville. He came back to the Nashville area and attended Vanderbilt Medical School, and then worked in the Vanderbilt Hospital, and eventually found his way to Salome, where he has made a tremendous difference. I've talked with his former board chair a number of times about the work Morgan has done, and it is truly remarkable and deserving of this distinguished alumnus recognition. Please join me now in welcoming Morgan Wills and congratulating him for this honor. We are, as I said, Morgan, very thankful to count you among our alumni. I personally am appreciative of your care and friendship and work that you've done at MBA, and certainly proud to have worked with your family and with Isaac, your son. Again, please join me in welcoming Morgan Wills.
Well, greetings and welcome to the pandemic version of the annual MBA Thanksgiving breakfast. I want to thank Brad and MBA for the honor of being recognized as this year's distinguished alumnus. And now you can add to my list of accomplishments that I officially drew the smallest in-person crowd ever for this event. Seriously, as a doctor, I'm grateful for the opportunity to give thanks today in a way that won't put anyone's health at risk. And another upside is that my far-flung kids, Isaac, Jesse, and Morgan Jr., are thrilled not to have to wake up early to hear their old man give a speech. Let's face it, we're all ready for 2020 to be over. In addition to what we've all gone through, I also managed to break my pelvis, tear both rotator cuffs, and unexpectedly bury our beloved German Shepherd. So when Brad called me about this last month, I actually thought I was in trouble. He said, "Morgan, there's an issue that I'd like to talk to you about. All of a sudden, I was transported back to being 16 again and getting called into the ball building to talk about poor decisions I may or may not have made that past weekend. To be honest, the funniest part actually happened after I got off the phone. My wife, Heather, asked what the call was about. And when I told her about the award, she said, "Oh, that's great, honey. But why did they pick you?" Now, to her credit, Heather quickly and graciously backtracked when she realized how that comment landed on my fragile ego. But I have to admit, I kind of wondered the same thing. I mean, look at the past recipients: titans of industry, a US Senator, a Cy Young Award winner, Reese Witherspoon. I guess that was Harpeth Hall. The point is, I felt a little out of my league. But then I thought, oh yeah, it's 2020. Everything is weird and unexpected this year. And then I learned about the other amazing alumni being recognized collectively today with the Distinguished Service Award for their frontline work during the pandemic. And it all began to make a bit more sense. So with that preamble in mind, I'd like to share a few thoughts. I hope you don't mind that I'm using a few notes. And like any good product of the MBA English department, I'll begin with a quotation. I think you may recognize it. "It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair." Now, doesn't that sound like 2020? As most of you know, these are the opening lines of Charles Dickens's A Tale of Two Cities. I quote them not because I remember much about the novel, but because they so vividly describe my experience this year, and perhaps others as well. That tension has been felt most acutely for me where I work at Salome Health. And like healthcare providers everywhere last spring, we found ourselves thrust into a global health crisis, learning by trial and error how to combat a deadly virus previously unknown to mankind. And yet, within days, we reinvented our complete operations on a dime, keeping doors open to serve some of Nashville's most medically vulnerable patients from around the world. As a leader in the crisis, I personally felt exposed, vulnerable, afraid, facing shortages of PPE and diagnostic tests to keep my people and patients safe. And yet, by improvising in dozens of ways, we've been able to safely screen hundreds of COVID suspicious patients, mostly frontline workers at places like meatpacking plants and construction sites who don't have the luxury of social distancing. And while many businesses have laid off staff or cut services, we actually expanded into the problem, launching a brand new clinic in the middle of a pandemic hot zone in Antioch, as well as a novel partnership with Metro Public Health to train and deploy community health workers to flatten the curve among hard-hit non-English speaking communities. Subsequent months have yielded more of the same: exhilarating highs and exhausting lows. Unexpected, rich family time at home during the shutdowns, and also daily gut-wrenching conversations at work through interpreters and face masks with patients who face their own version of Sophie's choice every day. Should I knowingly risk getting COVID or put food on the table to feed my family? So you may ask, how do we find ourselves in this position with this population? That's a good question. A charitably funded nonprofit founded 30 years ago, Salome Health has had a consistent mission to share the love of Christ by serving those in need through healthcare. But the patient population we've served has changed considerably. Salome was originally intended as an outreach to a largely African-American neighborhood in Edgehill. And then a funny thing happened. A former Vietnamese refugee walked into the clinic one day, and then he told two friends, and they told two friends, and so on, and so on. And pretty soon the majority of the patients were Vietnamese. Now, when I was a young Vanderbilt medical student, I had the chance to care for some of these patients while shadowing Salome's volunteer founder, Dr. David Gregory. I'll never forget the middle-aged man I saw on a Monday for a gunshot wound to the abdomen he'd received on Saturday. Can you imagine? In a primary care clinic? It's a miracle he didn't bleed to death. After checking his entrance and exit wounds, I asked why on earth he didn't go to one of the 3 hospitals within 2 miles of his home. He said that he was scared of being misunderstood because he didn't speak English, and of medical bills, which had caused some of his friends to go bankrupt. but he knew he could find compassionate, culturally sensitive care at Salome, regardless of his ability to pay. It was patients like him that led me to make a small donation to Salome. And with that in mind, I'm going to try and show a picture to you of that gift. I can just share my screen. I don't have any tech assistance here. There we go. I bought this painting when I was backpacking across Southeast Asia and visited a tenement outside of Hong Kong. And I met a man, a former art professor actually, who was selling these to make a little extra cash as he waited to be resettled to the US, hopefully. Can you feel the yearning in this painting for safety, for freedom, for hope and a future, and the tragic anticipation of loss along the way? I think this captures the hopes and fears of many, and it definitely belongs on the walls at Salome. Well, this image of Lady Liberty was more fitting than I realized at the time. The US was in the midst of the largest wave of immigration since the early 20th century, and Nashville was gaining a reputation as a new Ellis Island because of the surprising numbers of refugees resettling here. Soon, Kurds, Somalis, and Sudanese lost boys showed up at our doors, along with migrants from across Central America, all in need of basic health care. By the time I became the first regular staff doctor at Salome in 2000, over 100 nationalities were coming through our tiny rented clinic space each year. We've grown a lot since then, and through refugee medical screenings, volunteer opportunities, student training, and strategic partnerships, Salome has emerged as a vital bridge builder between what I call old Nashville and new Nashville. One of the more visible public examples of this is Amplify Nashville, an annual event Salome hosts at Oz Arts, where we celebrate distinguished immigrants who've made great contributions to the city. Our 2020 event was postponed due to COVID, but one of the honorees, George Hanna, is a great example of how an immigrant blesses our city. George is a native of Egypt who moved to Nashville when there were just a handful of Egyptian families in the area. In the late 90s, he was working in middle management at the Gaylord Opryland Hotel when the Delta Wing expansion was being planned. The only problem was unemployment was so low that they were about to put the plans on ice. And then George said, "I know where you can find the staff." It turns out that there were literally hundreds of overeducated, underemployed Egyptian immigrants living in New Jersey at the time. Gaylord eventually sent a bus up there to hold job interviews in a Coptic Orthodox church. When the bus filled up with new employees to return to Nashville, dozens of other Egyptians just followed in their cars, having no idea how far it was to Tennessee. And then more came and more came. Many slept at George's apartment until Gaylord could rent a motel on Briley Parkway to temporarily house them. Today, there are an estimated 10,000 Egyptian immigrants in Nashville, mostly Coptics, and they've become a critical ingredient in the growth of our tourist industry. If you don't believe me, next time you're allowed to attend a banquet at a downtown hotel, just say shukran to your server, which is Arabic for thank you. The bottom line is Nashville is changing, and Salome has had a front row seat for the show. The irony is, and this is a great life lesson, serving immigrants was not part of the original strategy. As Peter Drucker once said, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and Salome's culture of radical hospitality led it to a new and unexpected direction. Hospitality is actually where the term hospital comes from. It was a sacrament practiced by communities of monks across medieval Europe, and they made room and cared for ill strangers in their midst as if they were Christ himself. It's a far cry from the way the poor are treated in most modern hospitals, even here in a supposed healthcare mecca like Nashville. Today, Salome Health makes room to provide whole person care for 5,000 unique patients annually in 2 locations, including one that is rented from an Egyptian immigrant. The only criteria to be seen is to be both uninsured and uninsurable, basically to have nowhere else to go. 90% of our patients are new Americans, and in a booming city where 1 in 7 residents is now foreign born and 100,000 are uninsured, there's no shortage of demand, especially in the midst of our current crisis. So you may wonder, how does MBA fit into this story? Well, my initial response to this question was, not so much. But a funny thing happened on the way to my speech. I looked down at my hand and saw this waffle-shaped class ring. It's been sitting there for over 30 years. As I reflected on that quiet continuity, I realized that there was more of a big red thread running through my life's work than I initially thought. And it boils down to people. That's no surprise. So with my remaining time, I'd like to offer some thanks to three groups of people from the MBA community: mentors, mates, and unexpected friends. First, I want to thank the mentors. So many of us have been formed by great teachers and coaches while at MBA. Mrs. Lowry, Mrs. Hollins, and Mr. Drake come to mind for me, just to name a few. But when it comes to setting a standard of excellence, toughness, and attention to detail, Coach Tommy Owen stands out. Even more importantly, he believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. That was impactful for me, but also for our quarterback, Takis Patikas, because at 6'4" and 190 pounds sopping wet, I'm pretty sure I was the skinniest starting offensive tackle in the modern era of Big Red football. And Jim Hunt, if you're listening, you were the smallest starting lineman in the modern era, but inch for inch, I was the skinniest. The point is, mentors give us confidence. If teachers and coaches were mentors for a few years, other Big Red alumni have mentored me for life. First and foremost is my father, Ridley Wills II, class of '52. Dad is kind of a living legend at MBA. He literally wrote the book on MBA history. He also chaired the board during one of the most pivotal transitions in school history, hiring as headmaster Douglas Pascal, the Shakespeare-quoting, football-loving former Rhodes Scholar for whom our theater is so appropriately named. Dad came to campus every day during the last months of Douglas's life as he gradually succumbed way too early to pancreatic cancer. Dad, you've modeled for me a life of service for others, especially those less fortunate than yourself. If being a gentleman means anything, it's that. Thank you. Second, I give thanks for my mates, as in classmates. You know that watercolor painting that I gave to Salome? The only reason I was in a position to buy it was that MBA classmates Bo Wilson and Todd Bodorf invited me to couch surf in their Hong Kong apartment as I backpacked my way across Southeast Asia. And the reason I was taking that global journey in the first place, MBA classmate William Cochran, Bill, as we used to call him, was just crazy enough to join me in instigating an open-ended year-long odyssey across 25 countries before the invention of cell phones or internet. Part of that journey led me to a life-changing stint volunteering in a medical mission hospital in Ghana, West Africa. If Bill hadn't helped me summon the courage to get off the boat, like a young Marlowe in Conrad's Heart of Darkness, who knows if I would be doing anything remotely like what I'm doing today. Still, other MBA classmates or fellow physicians who've helped me along the way as a doctor. I saw a patient just last week that Nick Siviking did a cleft palate repair for as a child. And Dr. Ruben Bueno is a lifelong friend and colleague with whom I can both dream and commiserate when burnout lurks outside our doors. Regardless of whether we've seen each other in years, the beauty of being a part of a class, especially the class of '86, is that we can always pick up right where we left off. I'm sure many of you can relate to this experience. Our mates encourage us. Third, I'm thankful for what I like to call unexpected friends. These are MBA alumni whom I never knew on the Hill, but only later in life. It's funny how those differences in age, which seem so vast as a teenager, become irrelevant after we graduate. Living in Nashville, I've had the joy of getting to know a number of alumni from different generations over the years. There are too many to name, but one older, unexpected friend has been Dr. Andy Spickard, class of '49. It's hard to put into words what Andy has meant to me, both personally and professionally. As a former history major whose only college science class was physics for poets, pass-fail, I was a latecomer to pursuing a career in medicine. It was Andy's enthusiasm, counsel, and prayers that enabled me to take the plunge and stick with it. Over the years, he's opened my eyes to see a vision of how a man can love God and his family well while pursuing his profession with excellence and impact. I doubt I'd even be a doctor today without him. One more unexpected friend I'm deeply grateful for is Reggie Ford, class of '09. I love Reggie in part because his life experience is so different than mine. I'm ashamed to admit it, but when I left for college, I had exactly 0 Black friends. MBA didn't even have a Black graduate until the class behind me in 1987. And I, for one, was all the worse for it. To use the words of author Wendell Berry, I suffered from a hidden wound, handicapped by trappings of racism in our culture that I didn't even realize had affected me. Growing up in the South, being a gentleman often seemed to mean avoiding difficult conversations, especially about race. Yet over the years, and especially in the wake of George Floyd and so many other tragedies in 2020, I've had to come to terms with my privilege as a white man as never before. That image of freedom embodied in the painting by Lady Liberty, I'm freshly reminded that it's not just immigrants who have that longing. The American promise is still not yet fully realized for so many, especially those of color who've lived here their whole lives. Reggie is one of a handful of Black members of the MBA community, including the whole family of current senior Emmanuel Barrett, who have graciously and patiently helped me and my family along in this journey. And if you don't know Reggie yet, check out reggiedford.com. He's writing a memoir about his experience as a young Black man overcoming adversity in America, and I can't wait to read it. Just one more example of how unexpected friends broaden our perspective. There are many others too, but these mentors, mates, and unexpected friends are examples of those who've given me confidence, encouragement, and new eyes that inform the work I do every day. In a way, they've all become my co-conspirators, if you will, co-conspiring against boredom, brokenness, and injustice, co-conspiring to create fun and freedom and human flourishing. I've been blessed to have one amazing outlet for such work over the years at Salome Health, but it's certainly not the only venue for it, not by a long shot. In conclusion, I have 2 words for any of you who are still listening. First, congratulations. In the era of Zoom fatigue, it's impressive that you lasted this long. And second, go. Go find a challenge that moves you. And then seek out some co-conspirators to help you tackle it. The MBA community is full of them. Hopefully the next time Brad calls you up to share with you about an issue, you can plead guilty. Guilty of being in good trouble, as the late Congressman John Lewis used to say. It's been great to be with you. Thanks again. God bless and happy Thanksgiving.
Again, my thanks to Morgan, my appreciation to all of you for tuning in today and for caring about the school. We will be back together, we hope, soon with all of you on campus, and we'll celebrate many more events together. Today, it has been a special time to recognize those individuals for the Distinguished Service Award and Morgan Wills for the Distinguished Alumnus recognition. I wish you and your family a wonderful and a healthy and a safe Thanksgiving together, and I hope it is restful and in many ways restorative. Thanks again for your care of MBA.